White breakdown time. Dave Jones and Bob Flounders. I'd be Bob Flounders. Dave, for you, I wore my Roll Tide visor in honor of what happened on championship game weekend and in honor of Billy O'Brien, who made a little money, I think, long-term during the course of that game.
Oh, that's right. That didn't occur to me.
Lots of news to get to. Penn State's going to play Arkansas in the Outback Bowl. You sniffed it out on Sunday. Everyone was thinking Vegas Bowl. It was the Outback Bowl. It'll be their 5th time, I think, in Tampa. They're 3-1. They're playing Arkansas, Dave. Never played the Razorbacks, which is crazy to me that they've never, ever, ever played. Hopefully it'll be an interesting game. We still have to see about opt-outs. We have to see about the transfer portal. We have to see about Penn State's defensive coordinator. But I left the weekend recently. I know we're talking about who's going to be the defensive coordinator at Penn State. I just can't stop thinking about Penn State's former offensive coordinators. Not just Bill O'Brien essentially was an offensive coordinator when he was the head coach, but also Joe Moorhead rebounded nicely from what happened to Oregon on Friday. He's now the head coach at Akron. And a guy we never got to know, Dave, Kirk Shiraka, after 1 year at Penn State, went to West Virginia. I think he was an analyst. Now he is back as Pep Boy, as you like to call him, PJ Fleck's offensive coordinator. They worked well together.
He's always having a good day. He's having a great day. He's having a great day every day. Shiraka was great with Minnesota. That 2019 offense was terrific. I don't know if you can go home again. I think that was a unique group of talent and 3 really good receivers. Is Johnson still with the Buccaneers, right?
Yeah, I think Tyler Johnson is still with the Bucs. Rashad Bateman is in his first year with the Ravens. The other guy, though, the big receiver, that third receiver is still with the Gophers, but I think his eligibility could be about up. He's been there for a while.
Yeah, that would be Chris Ottman-Bell, and he's had a terrific year too. So what I'm saying is that was a unique cluster of talent with Tanner Morgan and some terrific running backs, Mo Ibrahim.
Yeah,
and not just him. They had a lot of really good talent that year for Kirk to work with, and he hasn't had that kind of talent since. It's funny how that works when the super geniuses are created around talent, and then when the talent goes, they're not such super geniuses anymore. They're more like wild.
You just want to keep dogging my man PJ Fleck. You just want to keep dogging him. I'm
not doing that. I'm just saying that I'm talking about Kirk. Really, I mean, he was a great with talent, not so.
Tanner Morgan never, I think, looked better during his time with Kirk. That game he had against Penn State was phenomenal, but he has regressed. I mean, he just hasn't looked like the same guy. I'm sure there's more to it than Kirk Moorhead, but
I don't think he's regressed. I think the offense has regressed, and the way they use him has regressed. Yeah. And injuries to the running back room have really damaged him. I mean, I believe they were working on their 4th string running back by the end of the season. And yet they were trying their best part of the team is probably their offensive line.
Yeah.
Basically, Fleck was just trying to gum games to death and shorten them, beat up people with the running game, and that hurt Morgan too. There were through 12 passes. There was one where he completed 6.
Right.
Exactly. Be Pickett in those situations. It really isn't. I think Tanner Morgan's he's going to be like a Brian Hoyer type of NFL quarterback. I think he's a very sharp kid. So I don't think it was him. I think it was everything around him.
Okay. Fair points. All of them fair. I was thinking that we were talking about the Georgia-Alabama game. I know it is the Blue White Breakdown, the Penn State podcast, but Billy O'Brien, Penn State fans, come on. You had to be rooting for Billy O. And I was thinking after the game, I know it's always hindsight, but they're like, oh, this Georgia defense. And Bill's never had more talent than when he's had at Alabama. And he's been game planning against like the Ravens and Rex Ryan and the Steelers defense when they had some teeth. Do you think he was really scared of the Georgia defense? Do you think he's had tougher challenges in the NFL, man?
It's kind of like a boy named Sue. I've met tougher, man, but I really can't remember when. I who was I guess we have a common friend from Georgia. He said, "Let me tell you now, this Jacoby Dean, I haven't seen a greater player than him. You might know who that is."
I know who it is.
And before the game, and I said, "So, you surprised?" He goes, 38 points surprised me. That's when it was 38 before it was, what did it end up?
41-24.
41, yeah. So yeah, it surprised a lot of people. It's funny how schedules, I was texting back and forth with Heather Dinich this morning, and I ran into a text that I sent her like on November 7th after we got back from Columbus. And you and I both kind of agreed that Ohio State offensive line was not what they were cracked up to be. Yeah. And we thought they could get beaten, that they were not a great team by any means at scrimmage, either on offense or defense. Yeah. And I texted her, I said, Ohio State it was November 7th. I texted her, Ohio State is frauds. I mean, they're not what people think they are. They're not as good, because she has to report on the College Football Playoff Committee and where they had them. And you remember there was a stage about a month ago where everyone thought they were wonderful.
Well, the Michigan State game,
look at their schedule. Look at who they were playing. They hadn't played anyone except for Oregon and Penn State, and they struggled with both of those teams. You can roll up, as a former Michigan basketball player said about Penn State when they went 13-0 at the start of the 1995-96 season. You can win a lot of games against Huckleberry State. So it's you got to look at schedules, man. I don't know who challenged Georgia before that game, really. Mm-hmm. Has been. That being said, Arkansas. Now, who does Arkansas remind you of that Penn State in a bowl game? This whole setup kind of reminds you of a recent Penn State bowl game with an underdog upstart team that's feeling really good about themselves and is probably going to be raring to go, and a Penn State team that could be just playing out the string.
Yeah, the Citrus Bowl, right? You're talking about Kentucky?
Kentucky.
And they have, so, and I know I was reading Daniel Gallen's storylines, and he was mentioning, how big the Arkansas quarterback is. He's like 250, like 6'3", 6'4". And I was like, you know what? It's almost like Penn State's defense is preparing to play against a little bit like Will Levis, because Will Levis is not that small compared to that quarterback, and they just didn't have him this year. But I think it's a great game. I love it when teams meet for the first time. It's who wants it more. Penn State didn't even want to be in that Citrus Bowl, I didn't think, until about halfway through the third quarter.
Well, are they going to want to be in this?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, I don't know.
The quarterback you're talking about is KJ Jefferson.
Yeah.
He's from a tiny little town in Mississippi, and he was pretty much neglected as a quarterback. He was being recruited as a tight end and a linebacker. What's that remind you of? Like, how many Penn State quarterbacks did we hear about like that from under Paterno? Well, we liked him as a linebacker, but we think we'd try him at quarterback. Wasn't Seneca? Wasn't he?
Seneca, I think Jim Kelly, Jeff Hostetler. I think they all looked at him at linebacker. Yeah.
So Arkansas was the only school that wanted him as a quarterback, and that was Chad Morris, the predecessor, who was like a high school coach, and it was considered a mistake to recruit him. Here he is now under Sam Pittman, who is by all accounts a miracle worker in this situation. Other than Vanderbilt, Arkansas was really playing like the worst team in the SEC of all 14. They had a couple of horrific seasons under Morris, 2-10, 2-10. They got rid of him. There had been a lot of residue under a few sleazy regimes with Houston Nutt and Bobby Petrino. And John L. Smith was stuck in for a year. It's been a mess. And then Bielema, who kind of came in there
our guy.
like a Bantam rooster. Well, not a Bantam rooster. Oh,
Go
like
on, go on.
with this strutting around like he was going to hit the SEC like the world on fire, and he found out it ain't that easy. And by the end, they wanted him out of there. It was a mess. And Sam Pittman, who was another just a total nomad. This guy's been to everywhere. He's been to 11 different FBS schools. He's 60 years old. He looked like a what are they doing kind of hire. And he's had the magic touch with these guys. They run through walls for him. They're not a super talented team. They don't have. They've got like 3 or 4 guys. Their wide receivers really good.
Yeah.
One of their safeties is really good. But outside of that, they got pluggers, and they've played everyone except for one team off their feet. 8-4, 4-4 was life or death with Alabama. Same thing with Mississippi. 2 of the 3 best teams in that league, and beat LSU, much more talented team, beat A&M, much more talented team, beat Texas, who is dysfunctional, but a much more talented team. So you can see these guys have been playing above their weight class, above their pay grade all season. And I think Arkansas hasn't been to a decent bowl in a decade. They've only been to one. They were going to go to the Texas Bowl last year as like a fill-in because there weren't enough teams, even though they were 3-7, and then COVID canceled that. So it's not a real bowl. So they've been to the Liberty Bowl and the Belk Bowl and the Texas Bowl back in 14, 15, 16 under Bielema. This is a big deal for them. Going to the Outback Bowl is a big deal. It's kind of a resurgence for them. They're going to be ready, you would think.
Yeah. Dave, I wanted to ask you this, circling back to the championship weekend. I mean, I didn't know. I knew Michigan was going to win that game. I was worried they were going to be flat. They just flattened Iowa. With expansion possible, and the Big Ten trying to have multiple teams maybe in the dance. It's been a pretty non-competitive Big Ten title game, East versus West, under the current alignment. I think it's 8-0, right? I think it's been all Big Ten East teams. The margin of victory isn't pretty. Do you think the Big Ten long-term needs to think about doing something about that? Or do you think
Ohio, I think they have to do, I've only been advocating this idea for like 10 years.
I teed you up then.
They first tried that stupid leaders and legends thing.
I knew you were gonna say
no one, it was such a dopey freaking, not to mention pretentious, but no one could remember who had which schools. Now, if there's one thing that's good about geographical alignment, you can remember who's in which division. And I think that's kind of important. Plus, it gives you a regional flavor. So even when there have been a lot of years where the East was better than the West, like pretty much all of them, there have been so many times where West teams, Iowa ambushed Ohio State. Right. Purdue did the same thing. Iowa ambushed Michigan. Wisconsin has played people really tough. They just haven't done it at the Big Ten championship level. The one loss difference is not that great over the course of the season, but the East has been top heavy. So I think what they have to do is go lakes and plains. Oh, yeah, I got it backwards. Lakes and plains. No, it is this way. Yeah, lakes and plains. So it's basically a northeast southwest alignment. If you do that, you can get Ohio State in the Southwest Division and the Plains Division, and even things out a little bit. And I think that's all you need to do. That way, you've got all the schools up by the lakes plus Rutgers, which doesn't really have a lake. Well, they probably have a toxic waste dump there that counts as a lake somewhere.
So in Penn State's division, you're the geography specialist, judging by that visual graphic you just gave us. So it's Penn State, what? Michigan State, Indiana, Purdue.
Not Indiana, Michigan State, Penn State, Rutgers, Minnesota, Wisconsin, like that. See,
okay,
everyone that's around a lake, and then the Plains adds. Yeah, it's got Iowa. Nebraska's got to get better at some point, and then they don't have to be a champion, but they've got they've got a money. I mean, they've got a budget. They're the fourth richest school in the league as far as football budget and athletic budget. So you've got Ohio State in with those schools in the Southwest, Illinois, Northwestern. Northwestern's in the Northeast too. The Northwestern's on the lake. So
Okay.
you're pretty much dividing it up by the cornfields and the schools around the lakes. And
Okay.
they need a big dog, man. They need Ohio
Yeah.
State to add in there with Iowa. I mean, that would those dogs, State, Iowa in the same division.
Yeah, I mean, I think it makes sense. I don't know that they have the commissioner that's probably interested in that, but I think you have a good idea, and I know you've written about it in the past. I forgot about lakes and plains. I always think of planes, trains, and automobiles when you do that with me, and I get a little
I didn't mean to do that. I just think Nebraska's got to get better. They don't have to be a championship caliber to be representative. They just need to be like Michigan State to be a contender. And I think that's what they are. So if you put Ohio State, Iowa, and Nebraska together, those are three big money schools. That should balance things out. It should.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know what I know that you I think you had a little chance to talk to Joe Moorhead a little bit, maybe via text, and I just didn't want to promote anything, no big announcements. I didn't know if
he agreed to it.
I didn't know if you wanted to hint at anything right now on future podcasts. We could kind of start to ramp it up, Dave, if you want to say something right now.
Yeah, well, I mean, he's agreed to be on the podcast. So the thing about Joe is he can talk about anything. He as I do, he enjoys severe weather. So we might go through the whole podcast and do nothing. I told him. He said, sure, I'll do it. He said, you know, we might not talk about anything except severe weather and doing impersonations, comparing our impersonations of Franklin, which he was all up for. He said, as long as I was talking about tornado videos in particular, because I will watch those forever. Did you ever see the one of the guy in Illinois, the old man who's like 84 and fearlessly, I guess he was thinking, I'm going to die anywhere. And anyway, I'm going to just stay here. It's an amazing, amazing video. His house collapsed on him while he was taking the video. And it's only like an EF3. And this thing goes right through his little town, collapsed the building, his house. And you see everything just being destroyed. I've never seen anything like it. And his wife was downstairs and she died. But you know, he published the thing. It's gotten like 4 million hits. So I don't know if he's alive anymore. Joe said, as long as we only do videos that are EF3 or higher on the advanced Vegeta scale. That was his response.
Does he have a James Franklin impersonation too?
We're going to find out.
Oh, okay. All right. I've been working on mine. It's not as good as yours, but I mean, that's a tall task for me to catch up to where you're at. Cause you're really, you know, you're like Joey Molinaro and Nick Saban now.
It's all about what you say, not how you say it in my mind. I mean, who was the best Skip Carey? You remember who did the best Skip Carey? It was from the NFL Network. You know, he used to work for ESPN. What's his name? You can't think of his name.
Is it Rich Eisen?
Rich Eisen, yeah.
A Michigan guy.
It doesn't sound like Skip Carey, really, but it's so exaggerated. It's hilarious. It's hilarious, you know. Yeah. Who did the best Joe Paterno? It was Jerry Keller. Yeah. Did it really sound like Joe? No, it was the stuff that he said. So don't worry about sounding exactly like him. It's all getting the key words in, which I think you're learning.
You heard it from Dave Jones, Penn State fans, on a future Blue White Breakdown podcast. We are confident we will have former Penn State OC Joe Moorhead, now the Akron head coach. He was the Oregon OC. He was the Mississippi State head coach. He's been to UConn. He's been to Fordham. I mean, what the stories he could tell us if he really wanted to. We'll see what we can get out of him. But I always enjoyed talking to Joe. I thought he was a very, very fascinating guy.
He's unlike a lot of coaches. I mean, he's not Brian Harsin, right?
Yeah.
He's not one of these androids who can only talk about X's and O's and football, and you look in his eyes. One of those Auburn beat writers who I know, she's no longer an Auburn beat writer. She's doing something else. She said you looked at his X's and O's. Parson from Auburn, who was at Boise State.
Yeah.
Joe's the opposite of that. Joe can talk about anything, so that's the fun part about him. He's got an eclectic mind.
I think this is timely because we don't know what's going to happen between now and the bowl game with regard to Jahan Dotson. You know, there's been Penn State talented players who have opted to play in bowl games. Saquon Barkley did in the Fiesta Bowl. Trace McSorley played in the Citrus Bowl. I mean, I think we always knew he was going to play. He actually played on a broken foot, I think, halfway through the game. But you just don't know, Dave. You don't know what they're going to decide to do. And if he would in the next couple of days, because we're doing this on a Tuesday afternoon. He could decide he's going to get ready for the draft, and no one would blame him. But I just wanted to real quick as we kind of wrap up this edition, just get your thoughts on kind of what he's meant to Penn State, how he's developed, and just what a unique player he is, because he's certainly not the biggest Penn State receiver we've ever covered, but man, I think he's the most dangerous receiver by far that we've ever covered.
You know what I think of him when I think of this year and last year, and especially this year? And I was thinking of it as far as my Heisman choice, and we can't talk about our Heisman ballots until after the presentation on Saturday, but we can talk about who we considered. And I think we shared our lists of the 7 or 8 that we considered, and Dotson was on both of them. Ultimately, neither of us picked him. But the reason I felt like I had to consider him, in spite of the fact that his stats are not like fabulous, like the kid from Pitt, his stats like fly off the sheet. Mm-hmm. And there were a couple other guys, but Dotson had so many. You could probably list a dozen highlight reel catches that he did this year, just contorting his body, twisting in air, getting just fingertips on the ball and coming down with it somehow, exposing himself, which a lot of receivers will not do. Crowds. It takes a little bit of courage to do that. He's done it all season. And that's why I thought, stats don't quite say that, do they? They don't quite describe all the incredible, important catches that he made in games where Penn State won and where they could have won because of him. That's what I think of when I think of Jahan Dotson. Plus, he's just a great kid. He's a nice kid who is aware and grateful for what he can do for his family. And that's all you can ask. He's just a really nice kid. So if he opted out of this, I think this should be kind of de rigueur for anyone in his position. Mm-hmm. You shouldn't have any pressure on you to play for a 7-5 team in a 3rd-tier bowl game. It just shouldn't. There should be no pressure from fans or coaches or anybody. It should be all his decision. And if he opts out of it, so be it. I mean, this is his big bet. This is his future on the line. The last thing you want to do is see him. Would Penn State fans be happy to see him get hurt in this game? For what? Right. For who? For what? Ricky Waters.
Harrisburg reference. No. Dave, Jahan Dotson. One of the things I'll remember about him is he was. I don't know. They listed him at about $185. He could be 185. He could be 190. If he played at 178, I wouldn't be surprised. He had elite small man skills, but he also had pretty elite big man skills because
he's strong.
He could go up and get the ball. He could win some contested catches. And he would go across the middle, yards after the catch, all those things, he could do all of those things. I don't see an NFL team, if they're going to evaluate him, I think he checks just about every box. I don't think he's got a weakness. I think he's certainly fast enough. He's got great hands. He runs great routes. I just am impressed by, he can play the game any way you want to play it. You know what I mean? If you want to press him, good luck. If you want to play off him, he's going to kill you underneath. I mean, you want to put your best corner on him, he's probably going to go up over the top of him. He just is such a fascinating player. I have only been covering Penn State for like 20 years, but when I think of Penn State's greatest wideouts, it's him, it's Allen Robinson, and a guy that was on the 82 national championship team that just didn't get a lot of volume. Kenny Jackson, who I thought was a tremendous talent. Whenever they got him the ball when he teamed with Todd Blackledge. I know Bobby Ingram was a great player at Penn State too.
Yeah, you're missing Bobby Ingram, buddy.
I know what I'm saying, but I think that if I was going to pick my three best Penn State wideouts, I think Bobby might be fourth.
I got to disagree with that. I think he's the best of all of them coming into this season. And Chris Godwin, I think his last year was tremendous.
He'd probably be my fifth. Probably be my fifth.
I'd put Godwin and Ingram in that top three with probably Robinson fourth.
Yeah, I just don't. I think people forget about Kenny Jackson because they really. I mean, they threw the ball some, but they didn't. If they would have featured him the way that Penn State featured Godwin and Robinson, even Ingram to an extent in the mid 90s, I just think he would have put up some pretty phenomenal numbers.
Well, as a comparison, I've always said Ingram is probably the best comparison among Penn State receivers because he wasn't big either, but he was tough. He had enough muscle to. And what do you think is going to happen with Dotson with NFL? Question: can he be muscled?
I would think that would be part of the game plan for sure, because he's gonna be one of those guys that they're gonna try and find out about him, and I just think that he's versatile enough to pretty much. First of all, you got to get your hands on him if you're gonna muscle him. Like if you miss him off miss him off the line of scrimmage and he's by you, then it's a problem. So it just depends. The thing that I like about him most is some of the big college receivers that aren't panning out so much. It's like either work ethic or it's they can't consistently catch the ball. And I don't think anyone's going to have any problems or any issues with Jahan Dotson on either one of those fronts. Right.
If he gets the ball, he's going to catch it. And he's going to work, which is more Bobby Ingram comparison. I think we probably should mention that Anthony Poindexter is looking like a very – I was talking about him last week. I think he is viewed around the country as I was wondering if you thought that Franklin – could make him coordinator just to save him. And that's always the push-pull with these things. Do you elevate a guy because you need to keep him, or even can you keep him? Now if he's head coach at Virginia, there's nothing Franklin can do because you're talking major money. We're talking $4 or $5 million a year, and he can't compete with that. That's a major move, and it looks like it's going to happen. Yeah,
and certainly the 1 year he had at Penn State was fantastic. He inherited a very good safety in Brisker, but I think Jair Brown, his development this year, a ball hawk who also led the team in solo tackles. That's certainly a feather in Poindexter's cap. And Davey certainly knew the safety position well because of what he did, at Virginia back-to-back years. He would have been a star in the NFL if he didn't rip up that knee. It's unfortunate, but he
could have went anywhere.
Could have done anything.
He could have went anywhere.
But he's good for him. I mean, good for him if he's the guy. And we'll just see what old James Franklin is going to do. He might be between the transfer portal, Dave, and some of the opt-outs possibly, and some of the holes in his assistant coaching staff. It should be a very, very. He looks forward to the opportunity, some new blood into the program. Guys are going to get their shot. I've been watching this guy for a long time. I'm confident he'll rise to the challenge.
Moorhead has some buzz phrases and buzzwords, so we're going to force him to do it because there's no reason he can't do it now. Yeah. He's got to have some. All right. Well, we'll get to that. Not next week, but the week after. I think we'll probably have him after signing day.
If you just want to do a separate podcast about the weather, I'm sure PennLive will greenlight it.
He's a weather geek like I am. I neglected to mention that, which is hilarious.
I just don't want to steal your thunder, step on your toes. But
you just stay out of the way, like Alexa. Stay out of the way.
I'm advocating for a separate weather podcast right now because I know you're going to go off on a tangent, and I'm not going to be able to put you guys back in.
We could have John Neese on. John Neese. Said John would talk serious weather to him, and he'd really get into that. So
I would like to also do a Taste of the Town podcast with Moorhead, specifically about Pittsburgh, just about the food, where he liked to go, what it was like growing up. Is Iron City beer underrated? Just stuff like that is what's on the top of my head. I don't know that I'm going to get my way, though.
See, he's within proximity of his hometown at Akron.
Yep.
And if you've ever been to Akron, that's got to be one of the reasons.
Maybe I'll go out and see him this summer. Maybe I'll drag Herman out to Akron. We'll see him for a couple days, and
take your own water.
All right, that's it for this edition of the Blue White Breakdown podcast. He's Dave Jones. Lakes and Plains, right? Lakes and Plains.
They'll never do it. They're going to.
All right, but I'm just trying to give you credit. Just trying to give credit where credit's due. It's been the Blue White Breakdown podcast. I'll be back later in the week with Daniel Gallen. Who knows? I hope maybe he's a weather guy. I could see Daniel being a weather guy.
He's a track guy. He's a track and field guy.
All right, I'll get him going on
distance runner.
He also plays a guitar, so we'll see.
Yeah, you're going to have talk about Steve Prefontaine or something.
All right.